colleagues are able to watch it at any time. There are also manuals and release notes on what we are going to cover this afternoon. You can access these via the RJ Metis website. So if you go to rjmetis.com and click on login here, down the bottom you'll have centre charge guides, and this is where you're able to download and print off all of our training manuals here. Okay, the ones you'll be interested in are the Centre Charge 2010 ones. Please download these if you'd like to. Okay, so this webinar is going to take you through how to set up a new client within Centre Charge through the walk-in process. So to start off, we're going to click on walk-in. And what this will do is it will load a draft license agreement onto the screen for you to be able to start populating the information for your potential clients. So if we type in an account name, so this is your client account. I'm just going to use my own name for this one. The contact, so this is the account contact, not the billing contact, so it could just be the contract, the contact that the contract is held with. So I'm going to put that as Lauren. Then the billing contact, so if you have a different contact that you need to send your invoices to, then you can also put their information in there as well. Then what you'll also need to do is you will also need to select a building. So I'm going to choose, in this case, the Grand Tower. And then a client type, so the classification. So whether they're a resident, a virtual, or a meeting room client, you need to select that. I'm going to select a residential client. The description is always populated by the account name, but if you did want to override this so that a different description will appear within the system when you search for a license, then you can do that as well. Then from here, you need to select the license agreement document that you're going to send out. I'm going to click on the residential license agreement. Then from here, you can choose if they're going to pay you by direct debit. If so, you can tick that. If they're not, leave it blank. And if you're allocating any parking spaces to their license agreement, so these parking spaces are free of charge, maybe part of a deal that you're offering. If you don't, then again, leave that blank. Over onto the right-hand side here, we have the salesperson field. So this is it automatically defaults to the person who's actually created the license agreement. But if it was somebody else and you were just looking at it on, creating it on their behalf, then you can use the drop-down here to select the user that actually sold the contract. Opportunity type, so if we drop this down, you can see whether they're a downgrade, a new customer, renewal, etc. I'm going to put them down as they are a new customer self-sourced, so we found them ourselves. And then if we click on lead source here, then if we click on find, and then you can choose exactly where they came from. So I'm going to say that as they were self-sourced, they're going to come through Google. Okay, and then the status at the moment is a draft because this is the first stage of the license agreement process. Please do bear in mind that all of these fields do need to be filled in. So all the ones in bold do need to be filled in for you to be able to move on to the next stage and actually issue your license agreement documentation. So again, please make sure these are filled in. Going down, the license term, so this is obviously the start and the end date of the client's contract. If it is a fixed term contract, then you can either choose the term by overriding this, for example. The system automatically does default it to be a 12-month contract, but again, if you do need to amend that, you can just overtype it. So that is a fixed term contract, so it has a fixed start and end date, and they're going to be there for 24 months. If the contract is rolling, then we click on is the contract rolling, and you can see that the term disappears and the end date has now changed to be a next review date. Now, that again is effectively an end date, but it's as they're rolling contracts, just the date that you're going to review their current contract. So if the contract is rolling, make sure that the next review date is correct, or if it is a fixed term contract, that the end date is correct and the term is also correct. I'm going to put that back to a 12-month contract. And moving down, the notice period. So this is the amount of notice that a client has to give you in order for them to terminate their license agreement with you. So I'm just going to put in 3 months, and we're going to move on. Does anybody have any questions at this point on anything I've just covered? If you do, please raise your hand. No? Okay, brilliant. I'll go on then. So if we scroll down here, you can see that we have a section called Address Details. Now this is where you populate the client's billing address, so where you're going to send their invoices to, and also their registered office address. If you can manually type in the billing address and the registered address if you have it, or if the billing address is going to be your site address, for example, you can click on Copy Site Address, and then that will copy the site address into the billing address section. Again, if the registered office is the same as the billing address, then you can tick this, and that will populate the billing address within the registered office. And alternatively, if you have a registered office details and you just want to type it in to save time and it matches the billing address, you can click on Copy Registered Address, and that will copy over to the billing address. So there's a few ways of copying addresses over for you so that you don't have to manually type in again. And also you can fill in their telephone, fax and email addresses within there as well. If you don't have a registered office address, then that's absolutely fine. You can just use the billing address, and the billing address will just show on the client's account if you activate the license agreement. Okay, going down, we have the invoice text and client reference. Now these ones are particularly good for exporting into Sage. So if anybody uses Sage line 50 and exports the invoices into there, if you select an invoice, if you type in an invoice text and a client reference, then these will be pulled over into Sage, so that when your accountant looks at the invoices within Sage, then it gives a description as to what the invoice is for. So for example, if it's a monthly license fee invoice, then if you put in the invoice text monthly license fee, then that will always be pulled through into Sage for you. Okay, if you don't use Sage, then those fields aren't relevant to you, but if you do use Sage, it is worth populating those. Moving down, we need to then add a room into the license agreement. So if we click on Add, you can either select, if you know what room that the client's going to take, then you can use the drop down here to select a suite, sorry. But if you can't remember which one they were going to take and you wanted to check the availability of your site, you can click on Check Availability, and that will show you all the units which are available and when they're available from, the workstations and the price of them. And then if you wanted to populate, say for example, unit 35, I could double click on that, and then that will filter through onto the license agreement. Okay, I'm going to know which one I'm selecting, so I'm going to choose unit 5. Okay, and as you can see, once I've selected unit 5, my actual workstations, my reference text, my deposit calculation, and my monthly price have all been selected for me. This is because the information on that screen is actually set up within the unit configuration itself. You can override any of this if you wanted to, but it's just set up within the item itself. So the actual workstations in this room are currently 15, but obviously if you sold it as a 16-person office or a 14-person office, then you can just highlight that and then manually overtype it. The reference text, that is the so if you were to produce an invoice for this client, this reference text would show the from date of the charge to the end date of the charge. So for example, the 1st of December to the 31st of December would appear on their invoice. If you don't want the from and to show on an invoice, then you can just highlight it and delete it off. I'm going to leave it on there though. I'm just going to re-add that. The start date and the end date of the license have been pulled through from the general tab of the general sort of information of the license agreement. So anything you alter in here, if say you think the start or the end date is incorrect, please make sure that you go back and also amend it within the front screen of the license agreement as well, so that they both match. It's very important that both the license agreement and the rent start and end dates do match. The deposit held and additional deposit required, this calculation is stored within your system setup. So normally, for example, in this case, it's the highest value times 2. So my monthly price is $750, and my additional deposit required is $1,500. Now, it's in additional deposit required and not in deposit held because we don't actually hold a deposit for this potential client. We actually would like to charge them £1,500. Okay, so anything that's in that additional deposit required will be invoiced at the point of activation of the license agreement. Okay, any questions so far? If you have, please raise your hand. Okay, no questions, so I will move on. If, for example, obviously the monthly price has been pulled through from the item setup itself, but if, for example, you are offering them a stepped deal, so, 3 months at X figure, then the next 3 months at Y figure, etc., or you're offering them a month for free, you can quite easily do this within the monthly price column here. For example, I'm going to set up a step deal, so I'm going to charge them £500 for the first 3 months, $750 for the next 3 months, and then £1,000 for the rest of their contract. You can see here that if I click on this monthly price field, it will highlight the $750, and I can just simply overtype that with 500, hit return or enter on my keyboard, and that will update all of the schedule below that monthly price. So on the 4th month, I'm going to charge them $750. So again, I highlight the field that I want to amend, and then select $750, hit return or enter on my keyboard again, and that will update again everything below that month. And then similarly, after the 3 months, I'm going to charge $1,000. So I'm just going to go through that same process, hit enter again, and you can see that it's updated everything below. You can also see that the system has calculated that, because my highest value is £1,000, my deposit is no longer $1,500, it's going to be £2,000. So you can see that systems automatically work that out for you. You'll also see that the system has prorated to the first payment and the last payment. Now that is because the contract starts mid-month. So if you want to have, so for example, this is one set up so that it's charging from the 8th of November till the 30th of November. But if you wanted to charge from the 8th of November to the 7th of December, then charge from the 8th of December to the 31st of December, you can click here on prorate second payment, and what you will see here is that you're charging them for a full month up front, and then you're prorating the second payment over here. Okay, if you wanted to just charge sort of on an anniversary basis, which means that you're going to charge from the 8th of November to the 7th of December, the 8th of December to the 7th of January, etc., then you click on anniversary, and you'll see that there's no prorated payments, and everything runs from the 8th of the month to the 7th of the following month. Okay. Any questions on prorating or anniversary? Please raise your hand if you do. Okay, no questions. Okay, I'll move on then. So that was sort of setting up the, I'm going to get rid of those two, so I'm just going to keep it simple if I'm going to prorate the first payment. Now, if you were to offer a month for free, it's the same sort of process as setting up a stepped deal, in that if you were going to charge the first month free of charge or the last month free of charge, if you highlight the field, click on 0, hit enter, and then obviously that will update everything below that month. Just highlight then what the next month, enter the price, and then hit return again, and that's how you'd set up a month free period. Again, if you want to prorate the second payment or do the billing on an anniversary basis, so across months, then you can use these two options here. So that was a monthly setup. If you wanted to, normally it's either monthly or quarterly. So if you wanted to do a quarterly payment, you select the schedule here, and then if you find quarterly, select that, and you'll see that the invoice schedule below on the screen has updated to be on a quarterly basis. Now, the system is trying to prorate some of the quarterly payments, which, as you can see, can be slightly confusing in that you've got from the 8th of November to the 31st of January, and it's giving sort of strange kind of periods, and as you can see by the last one, it's going to try and invoice for just for 7 days. So what we recommend, that if it's a quarterly payment, a quarterly schedule, and it doesn't, and the contract doesn't start on the 1st of the month, it is advised if you click on anniversary billing, then what that will do is that will just literally break it down by quarter. You'll have no prorated payments, and everything is just will run. You know, you'll just have raised 4 invoices for the amounts that you set up. Whereas if you didn't have anniversary, you can see that there's slightly more scheduled, slightly more payments to be made, invoices to be raised there, and it does, you know, it's not as straightforward as having a quarterly payment ticked as anniversary. So if it's a quarterly payment, I do recommend that you put it as an anniversary billing client. Okay, I'm going to pop it back to monthly. I'm going to change my schedule here to monthly, and as you can see, my monthly schedule has reappeared. Now, what you'll need to do, another scenario you can have is, say a client prepays, or you know, you're going to invoice them for the prorated amount and the second full month, etc. If you see here, you've got a column called Invoice Now. If you were to tick those, for example, so I've ticked the first 3 periods here, this means that when I activate this agreement, so I make them a live billing client, then my initial invoice that I'm going to have is going to be for 3 months. So I'm billing them for 3 months straight away before, as their contract begins, or even before their contract has begun. So for a client that's paid 6 months in advance, you would just simply tick for 6 months down on the invoice now, and then the following 6 months would then appear, would just then run with your monthly bills when you come to do them. So anything you want to invoice now, also invoice straight away as it were, you just tick the column here. Okay, any questions on that so far? No, okay, no problem. So once we're happy that everything's set up within this room, we're going to click on Save, so that's going to save it to the agreement. And then what we can do is, from here, you can add multiple rooms to the same agreement. So as you can see, we've got 1 here at the moment. But if we wanted to add another room, say they'd taken out Suite 6 as well as Suite 5, then if we click on Add, again, use the drop down here, or the check availability, select Suite 6, and again, exactly the same thing happens. And you can amend the workstation, change the monthly price, and alter it as you wish. I'm going to leave it like that. Click on Save again, and then that saves the 2 rooms to this 1 license agreement. And you can see here, it's saying it's a step deal. This for Suite 5, with a deposit going to be charged for £2,000, and for Suite 6, the price is £1,000 a month, and then the deposit is also £2,000 for that room as well. Going down, if you wanted to add any contract services, then you can do that just simply by clicking Add, and then using the drop down to select the contract service you wish to charge for. I'm going to select broadband rental, and you can see that again some of the fields have been populated for me. So the reference is also there. Start and end date again matches the rooms and the actual license agreement itself. The schedule I'm going to leave as monthly because the rooms are billed monthly as well, so I'm going to have them all billing monthly. The only difference here really is within the quantity and the deposit, because obviously within a room you don't have a quantity, but contract services, depending on the number of workstations that have in the room, they may have more than 1, or however many rooms they have, they may have different quantities on their contract service. So for this one, for their broadband rental, I'm going to have 2 broadband rentals, as I've got 2 units set up. And you can see here the monthly price is £20. I'm going to charge £50 per unit. So please be advised that the monthly price is not the combination of the price times the quantity. The monthly price is per individual item. So it's going to be on the invoice, it's going to charge 50 times 2, so the monthly price times the quantity. Okay, I'm going to tick to invoice that now, and then I'm going to save it to the agreement. And again, same thing, if you want to keep adding them, then you can just keep adding these services as well. I'm going to select a telephone handset rental 2, select that. I'm going to select 25 of those because I know there's quite a few units, quite a few workstations in my unit, and then I'm going to leave the monthly price as it is. The deposit you will see is actually greyed out. Now that is because the system is not set to charge a deposit for the contract services. Obviously, if you do charge a deposit for contract services, then that will be set up within your database. If you don't, then you just need to leave that and not worry about the deposit at all. If you do charge a deposit, then you will have the ability to override the deposit should you need to. In this system, as you can see, it's not set to charge a deposit for the contract services, so it's just set at 0, and I can't amend that, and the field is greyed out. I'm going to tick invoice that now as well, and I'm going to save that to the agreement. Okay, so going down the agreement, you can see that we've got a section called Add Additional Charges to Initial Invoice. What this is showing is this is showing what you're going to invoice for when you activate your license agreement. So as soon as you click on Activate and make this client live and billing, an invoice will be produced for everything that is within this section. So these are obviously the recurring charges that we've added previously on the agreement. But if you wish to add some additional ad hoc charges, I don't know, you could charge for a room setup fee or something like that, you can do that if you just click on Add and then select the item that you wish. I'm going to click Building Work, and then as a reference I'm going to say room setup. Okay, start date is normally just the start date of the contract, and I'm just going to leave the end date to be the same. I'm going to have my quantity as 2 because I've got 2 rooms, and my amount is going to be £100 per room. So it's, again, the quantity times the amount. Okay, and then to add that to the initial invoice, I'm going to save that, and then if you scroll down in the initial invoice section, my building work item will be there. So for you to add additional charges, that's fine, but you have to remember that additional charges are ad hoc one-off charges. They're not recurring charges, they are ad hoc one-off charges. So you add your room and your contract services, so your recurring charges to the agreement, and then any room setup fees, painting, I don't know, anything else that you want to charge as a one-off as part of the setup, then you add it to this section here. Okay, does anybody have any questions for me so far? If so, please raise your hand. Yep, we have a question. Hi, Martin. Do you have a question for me?
Yeah, I was just going to say, on this, when you add in the initial charges on here,
Yeah.
if you, let's say we tick the box that says second pro rata, so we're going to raise a first full month and then a pro rata.
Yeah.
When we put the additional charges onto this bit where you're now at, is there any way where we can say, I want this charge to go on the pro rata, so we can sort of select that certain charges go to certain invoice rather than, is there any sort of way that we can make these charges go into the pro rata rather than the first month?
No, that would have to be manually entered when you next raise your invoice.
So these would automatically go onto the... Right. Okay.
Yeah, this is only for the first invoice that you're going to raise, so the initial invoice that you're going to raise for the client. If you wanted to assign a charge to the, if you were to prorate the second payment and want to add an additional charge onto that, then you'll need to do that as a manual entry.
Right, okay. So this automatically puts it on the first month rather than the pro rata?
Yeah, because that's what you're ticked to invoice now, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Lauren. Thanks for that. Yep.
Thanks, cheers. Martin. Hi, Samantha. Did you have a question for me? Samantha, do you have a question? Hello? Samantha, are you there? If you, I can't hear anything. So if you do have a question, could you type it into the question box for me, please? Because I can't hear you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, nobody's got any questions. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to the next section, which is the comments section. Now, this comment section is a sort of an internal section. So if you would like to add a comment for your other colleagues to read on when the license has been activated, then you can do that. It's just there will be a comment to have within the activated agreement. That any internal comments you would like to add will be shown within there. It's a free text box, so you can just type away in there. And also, we do have a spell check facility if you have any doubts as to your spelling. Okay, so that's an internal box, so that won't appear, and the client will not see anything written in that comments box. Okay. Going down, the non-standard terms. Now, these are any sort of contract deals that you've added, so whether it be sort of 5 hours free of meeting rooms per month or anything like that, then this is where you would just populate the information so that you and your other colleagues and also the client are aware. Okay, so what you can do, again, this is a free text box, so if you wanted to type in anything in there, then you can do that. You can also set default terms within the system. So this can be done under configuration and lookups. I'm not going to show you how to do that today, but this will be explained in another webinar in the new year on how to set up your license configuration. Okay, but you can set these default terms up if there are, if you're offering special deals or something like that. I'm going to click on default terms, and you can see that I have one here of 5 hours free meeting rooms for 3 months. So this is just letting everybody and the client know that this client is entitled to 5 hours free of meeting rooms for the first 3 months of their contract. So I'm going to select that. I'm just going to pop that down to a separate line there. Okay. Now this won't actually set up a discount or anything like that within the system. This is just purely for yourself, your colleagues, and your client's information. It doesn't actually set anything up. It's just there for you to refer back to. Okay. Then the next stage, once you've entered any comments or any non-standard terms, then you will need to accept preview license agreement. And what this will do is it will load the license agreement that you've selected, so in our case, the residential license agreement, and it will give you the option to select any other license agreement documents you wish to send out, for example, a direct debit or a pro forma invoice or something like that. So you can see that my residential agreement is loading onto the screen now. Yep, so there it is. So this is our sort of standard license agreement within this sort of demo database. Obviously, yours may look slightly different to this. And you can see, obviously, that you've got the suite names, all the information for the client to have a look at there. If you did want to send out additional documents, you can see you've got a selection over here on the left-hand side. To select, I'm going to select the pro forma, for example. If I tick that box there, then the pro forma document is loaded, and it will show. So this is quite a handy one to send out. So this is basically the initial invoice, just not the VAT invoice. So the pro forma will show what they need to pay up front. In this case, it's £7,140.80. And so this just gives them an idea. So once you send out your agreement, you can send out a pro forma to say this is what you owe us now. And then when you activate the agreement, that's when you would actually produce the VAT invoice. Okay, so you can see that we've got all of our suites, our contract services, our ad hoc charges, and our deposits on there as well. Okay, so once you've selected your documents that you'd like to send out, then you can click on Send License, and then you can send it to the printer or via email. And I'm going to send it via email so you can see what happens. But obviously, if you wanted to print it out and issue it to your customer, then you could do that as well. So I'm going to technically issue my documents to the clients. I'm going to send them to him to sign and send back to me. So what it's doing now is just attaching these documents as PDFs onto my email. Okay, so you can see that we've got our residential license agreement and our pro forma invoice. I'm going to send these to myself. So I'm going to send these to myself. If you want to change the subject, then you can do that. And if you wanted to put in any text, so dear, please find your license agreement, and for example, I've just, but you can type anything you want to in there. Okay, so from here, that you'll need to issue the documents, so you'll need to actually send them out. So if we click on Send Email, that will just send out those agreement and the pro forma. And then if we go into licenses, and we're going to search for Lauren Enterprises, hit Return, and you can see here that we've got an issued license at the Grand Tower for Lauren Enterprises. So issued is a stage on from draft, and it is just letting you know that the documents have been issued, but they may not yet have been received back, and they haven't been activated, so they are not current client and are not billing within centre charge. Okay. So if you wanted, so if we open that up, if you needed to make any amendments once you've issued the license agreement documents, I don't know, you've spelt their name wrong, or the pricing is slightly different to, you made an error on the agreement and the pricing is slightly different. Any amendments you need to make cannot be done while the license is in its issued format. Okay? What you would need to do is you would need to revert the license to draft, so you're going back a stage, in order to make the amendments, and then you would have to re-preview and reissue the document. Okay, so to revert an issued license to draft to make any amendments, you need to open the agreement, click on Revert to Draft up here. That's reverted it back to draft, and then what we can do here is we can make the amendments that we need to. So for example, say we forgot Lauren's surname, and our pricing for our room suite 6 was incorrect. We forgot to give them the free month, so I'm just going to make the amendment. So again, making sure I click on the correct month, hit the amount, hit Return on my keyboard, which will set up the free month. Save that. And then what we would need to do, as we've made an amendment, we need to now re-preview the license agreement. So you can hit Preview up here. And then reselect the document, so the residential license and the pro forma. And then send license again, and again I'm going to do it by email. And you can see now that my initial invoice, my pro forma amount has changed from 7,000 to 6,000 and something, because I made the first payment of Suite 6 rent free. Okay. So again, I'm going to send that off to my client for them to sign and send back to me. So we click on Send Email, and that has reissued those documents. Okay. Has anybody got any questions on sending out the agreement and then making any amendments once you've sent the agreement out? No questions? Okay, brilliant. So once your client, you've issued the documents to your client and they've sent them back and they said, yep, here we go, let's go ahead, we want to become your client, what you would need to do is find the issued agreement as we did previously, go to licenses, search the account name, and then double click into open the issued license agreement. Okay, so our license here now is ready to be activated. Okay, so making sure everything is, double checking everything is correct here. So yeah, we've got everything added on that we needed. Fantastic, brilliant. What we need to do now is we need to activate the agreement. So we're going to make them live. Okay, so to do that, click on Activate License. Right, now this is where you complete the financial data of tab of the account. So along the tabs at the bottom, you've got one that says financial data, and you can complete this field before you even activate your agreement. So you can set up their accounts ID, their payment methods, invoice method, everything. You can do that right now. Okay, so I'm going to set them up with an account ID of Lauren 001. Okay, I'm going to charge them tax because they're an English client, so we're going to charge them tax. I don't have a department code because I'm not using Sage as Sage 200 as my accounting package, so I'm going to leave that blank. I don't have a VAT number for this client because I didn't ask for it, so I'm not. But if you did have one, then you could just type that in there. Okay. A credit limit, if you wanted to have a credit limit for the client, so I don't know, you wanted it to match your deposit or something like that, then you can type in a credit limit. Now the credit limit it's not actually a function within the system, it's just for information really, so that you know if you've got a credit limit, then if they didn't pay you any invoices, etc., you know that they have a credit limit. It's always good to make the credit limit match the deposit, so that if they did owe you money, then the max that they could owe you at any one time is the amount of their deposit. Okay, I'm going to leave that blank as just 0. I'm not going to set this client up with a credit limit. Okay. Payment methods, so if you have different payment types and payment terms for your sort of ad hoc sort of meeting room invoices compared to your recurring monthly invoices, then you can set these up within this part of the license process. For example, if I raise a meeting room invoice for this client, I'm going to say that I want it paid by check and I want it paid immediately. Okay. But, for example, my rent, I'm going to say I want it paid, for my recurring invoice, I'm going to say I want that paid by a standing order, and I want that paid within 30 days of the invoice date. Okay? So every time you raise an invoice for this client, they, whether it be a meeting room invoice or a sort of recurring charge invoice, then these payment types and terms will appear on there. Okay? Then going down, the invoice method, so this is where you choose, this is where you select how the client is going to receive their invoices, whether it be printed or emailed or both. You need, bear in mind, if you do take email, please make sure that you enter an email address so the system can send the email out when you produce their invoices. If you want to have them as print and email, then you can leave both of them ticked. Or if you do have Cassie in the Cloud, our sort of portal, and you want to post your bills to your website so your client can pay on your website, then you can click Online Bill, and then that will automatically post the invoice to your website when you've produced it. Okay, and then Include Itemized Bill with Invoice. This is just basically the second page. Normally you have 2 pages of an invoice. The first page is like a summary, and then the second page is going to be like a more detailed breakdown of what the client is billed for. So I'm going to include that second detailed page within these client's invoices. Okay, and then again, the final section really is the initial invoice options. So you know we had all of those different charges on the initial invoice. We had a deposit, we had a suite, we had a contract services, and we also had our building work item. From here, if you wanted to produce a separate deposit deposit invoice from the services and the sort of setup fee, then you can click on separate deposit invoice. Again, if you want to produce a separate rent invoice to a service invoice, then you can separate those out. And if you wanted to produce a separate pro rata invoice, then you can do that as well. If you wanted to tick all three, so you produce a separate deposit invoice, a separate rent and contract service invoice, and then also a separate pro rata invoice, then you can tick all three as well. I'm going to just stick to produce a separate deposit invoice. So when I activate my license agreement, I'm going to have an invoice for my deposit and an invoice for my rooms, my services, and my setup fee item. Okay. And then the type of movement, which is always good for reporting purposes, so that you know exactly what clients are doing within your building, you can drop that down, and then you can see it's the same as the opportunity type, basically, when you're first setting up the agreement. Move in new client is what I'm going to select here. I'm going to leave the option to preview the initial invoice. So as soon as I click on activate, I'm going to have my invoices put on the screen for me. Okay, so I'm going to leave that, and then I'm going to hit activate now to make them a live billing client. Okay, and as you can see, it says my license has been activated. My license agreement number is 0000119. Okay, so if I click on OK to that message, you'll see then that I've got one of my invoices on the screen. So it's got my rent, my services, and my building item. And then you can see on the left-hand side, you've got Lauren Enterprises twice. If you click on the second line down, this is my deposit invoice. Okay, and so I want to now issue those invoices to my clients, so they need to pay me straight away as now they're in the building or they're going to be moving in the building. What I can do is click on all on one email, so that will put both of those. Oops, I haven't selected an invoice date. Make sure you select an invoice date. So I'm going to click on all on one email. 8th of the 11th is correct for my invoice date. I do want to mark this as a printed invoice once I've sent it, so I'm going to click on yes. And then what that will do is that will load both of those invoices onto the same email for me to be able to send to our client. So I've got both of my invoices there. I'm going to send those through. Click on send. And as you can see, our license for Lauren Enterprises is now an activated agreement. So we're going to start billing them as part of our monthly bill run process, and they have had their initial invoice sent out to them. That was the whole process on how to set up a license agreement for a brand new client through the walk-in. Does anybody have any questions for me? If so, please raise your hand or type a question into the question box. No questions? Don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Okay. Oh, we do have one. Always good. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Lauren. Just a quick one. When you raise the draft license agreement, so when it goes from the first, I can't remember what it's actually called now, when you send it out to the client by email, the draft issued one, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
The invoices that go out to the client are just draft, aren't they? So the only proper one is raised after you press the activate button. Is that correct?
Yeah, the pro forma isn't a VAT invoice. It's just
no, so that won't get into printed invoices. Basically.
No. It's just informing them of what they will need to pay you when they actually sign and send back the agreement, and then the actual VAT invoice.
Yeah. Okay. I did think that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Lauren. Cheers.
No problem, Martin. Thank you.
Bye.
Any other questions from anybody else on anything that we've covered today? No? Okay. This has been videoed for you, and it will be uploaded onto our YouTube site for you to view at any time. If you do, so you can search, that will be done today, so if you do want to search for it later on today, then you can do that. If you do have any questions or you think of anything after we've got off the webinar, then you can email us support@rjmetis, and we will answer any questions that you've had. I hope you found this webinar helpful, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.